Okay kids, it's time for books. So come up to Mum or Dad and let's rock and read. Today I'll be reading you Miss Franklin, how Miles Franklin's brilliant career began. The new teacher, Miss Stella Maria Sarah Miles Franklin, looked out the window of her tiny room at the end of the farmhouse veranda. She saw a young girl in boots too big for her, kicking rocks across the top paddock. "Hello," she called out as she put down her pen. But the girl only chucked a rock her way and ran up the hill. Miss Franklin chalked some letters on the blackboard in the shed that was now a schoolroom. The four Davis children, scrubbed and neat, began chanting until Bertie caught sight of the girl outside. "Miss Franklin, ma'am, it's that real naughty girl our neighbour Miss Hobbins took in. Our mother said keep clear of Imp on account of she's got no manners," Kate said. "Yoo-hoo," said Miss Franklin called. "Imp, come down right now and join us." All the kids but Florrie growled. Florrie liked Imp. Imp took off, but this time only halfway up the hill. As their lessons went on, the Davis kids could see Imp fashioning a doll out of twigs. As they chanted their times tables, the Davis kids saw her making a stone castle. And when Miss Franklin read them some new bush poetry, they saw Imp using a catapult to knock her castle down, stone by stone. "Hey, Imp," Florrie called, but Imp took off again. "She has to do chores at the dairy," Henry said. "The potty calves and the mucking out and all," Bertie explained. When Miss Franklin took her afternoon walk, she saw Florrie and Imp together. Florrie was taking the twig doll and offering Imp some blue speckled eggs in return. "Miss is teaching us to read, even books," Florrie told Imp. "You should come too." "Never! Waste of time. Learning to read when you work all day on a farm," Imp said loudly as she turned away. But Miss Franklin next saw Imp in the schoolroom. She took up a piece of chalk and drew herself on the board. She couldn't write her name, but the Davis kids would know she had been there. "You draw well, Imp," Miss Franklin said. "I can see you want to make your mark, just like I do." But the wild girl sprang away and then, turning her head, spat on the ground in front of the red-haired teacher before she took off to the hill. Miss Franklin had a favourite rock way up the hill, the one that looked towards Galburn and the place she longed to be, the city of Sydney. "Ma'am!" Suddenly Imp was behind her. You mustn't creep up on me like that, Miss Franklin said. But miss, it's my track, Imp told her. Imp could see Miss Franklin had tears in her eyes. She looked angry. She turned away as if to speak to the rocks and the first stars. You can have it then, all of it. I'm homesick way out here, away from everything I know. Imp was quiet a moment when she asked, would you like to chuck this rock, miss? The next day, Imp came to the door of Miss Franklin's room with a little heaving bundle in her hand. This bird's gone and broke its wing. Broken its wing? Why'd you bring it to me? Miss Franklin asked. The Hobbins were dashed against a rock, but I thought you wouldn't. I'll ask Mr. Davis to splint it like he fixed their kitten's broken leg, said Miss Franklin. Imp smiled. I put a seat outside the school shed, Miss Franklin said. You can look in the window, learn your letters and everything. Everything will change for you, I promise. Never, Imp sprang away. But Imp soon came back to check on the bird. Mr. Davis reckons that this bird will fly, Miss Franklin told her, and I wish I could fly away from here too. Imp frowned. How come, miss? I'm wired with longing to do something. I want to write write a book about people like us, about our place, about our dreams. I don't want to go home to scrub and wash and toil endlessly. I want to become a famous Australian writer, right now. What's stopping you then, miss? You got the words. I heard 'em. You got paper and lots of exercise books. You got ink, all you need. And you got a pen with a nib. So what's stopping you? Miss Franklin was quiet for a moment, and then suddenly she began laughing. That's brilliant, you strange child. Quite brilliant. I do have all of that. And before Im could go, Miss Franklin pecked her cheek with startling kindness. Ouch, Imp said, but she didn't wipe the kiss away. She went home with a mended bird and singing like a bird. On one shivery autumn day, Miss Franklin overheard little Florrie telling Imp something important. Miss is going to leave our farm soon. Bertie said, she's writing a whole book while she's here. She's written a whole book while she's here. And Dad said some fool is going to publish it and all. She's going to be a writer. A whole book. Imp smiled a secret smile. On her last day, when Miss Franklin came to collect her things, she gave a gasp of pleasure. She saw a coloured stone and a sprig of wattle on the teacher's table. And there in the middle of the blackboard, something was written in big wobbly letters. She knew Imp didn't have a piece of paper or a pen with a nib, but she'd worked out how to write something important. Thank you. Miss Franklin smiled and smiled. "Thank you, Imp," she said, glancing up to see the horse and Sulky waiting to take her to the train station. "You're on your way too," she murmured. Miss Stella, Maria, Sarah, Miles Franklin waved goodbye to the Davis children, and then to Imp, half hidden behind the tree, way up the hill. She was off and away to begin a whole new, different career. Well, thank you for joining me to read Miss Franklin, How Miles Franklin's Brilliant Career Began. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time. Oh, and remember, for my mum and dad to subscribe so you can see all my books. Bye!